I am so happy to have you here today because it's been you're a real idol of ours here in clinic, and we speak about you and your products all of the time. The values that you subscribe to and the values that back up Daye are based on sustainability. They're based on bridging that gender gap in healthcare and working with to support women's health so it actually becomes accessible and spoken about in a world that seems to push those things down and make it a very taboo subject. I'd love to introduce you as CEO and founder of Daye, offering menstrual products that are sustainable and toxin-free. So very clean, healthy products. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today, how that is so important and why that's so important from a health perspective, and how this is changing and transforming the women's health care and women's health support.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to share some insights on topics in gynecological health that don't get as much attention and information as they deserve to. So Daye as a platform, what we're doing is we're creating a comprehensive gynecological health solution, which covers menstrual, vaginal, and hormonal health. And one of our key hypotheses as a brand is that menstrual tampons can serve for a lot more than just soaking up menstrual fluids. Menstrual tampons can bridge some of the main gaps that exist in the provision of healthcare today for women in particular. And on the next slide, you will see our reason for existence. The reason why Daye was founded was to bridge the gender gap in medical innovation and to provide solutions to the problem that many face today, which is that medical innovation misunderstands and underserves women's bodies and minds. And on the next slide, there's an interesting chart that explains why this is the case. So it actually wasn't until 1993 when women were first allowed to participate in modern medical research. Until then, it was believed that women could be pregnant, therefore should be excluded from clinical trials, or that our menstrual cycles would pollute the quality of the clinical data. So until 1993, the majority of medications and medical devices weren't tested on the female physiology, nor were they developed for the female physiology. Now, as a result of this, the majority of medications that we still use today, whether it's over-the-counter painkillers or antibiotics, sleeping medications, antidepressants, the majority of them were brought to market before 1993, and as a result, weren't developed for nor tested on the female physiology. And interestingly, this applies for products that were designed for women specifically. So the female Viagra, in its safety testing, was tested on 92% male patients. So the majority of people who tested the female Viagra were, in fact, men. And on the next slide, you can see our answer to this or the solution. So we really believe that menstrual tampons can break the cycle of poor innovation in gynecological health by providing a familiar and accessible, convenient method to administer localized pain relief for painful periods, to detect infections, to screen for pathogens that could be inhibiting your fertility, and then to also provide treatments directly to the vaginal canal. So we have a longer term vision where we want to use the tampon as a drug delivery platform altogether, taking advantage of the vaginal route of drug administration, which is a really underappreciated and underserved one. But as you will see on the next slide, we started by reinventing the menstrual tampon, which has had the same design for decades. And we made it safer. So we're the only tampon company to sanitize our tampons, removing any pathogens or bacteria from their surface using gamma ray irradiation. And this significantly reduces the risk of toxic shock syndrome, but also of pathogens like E. coli, which causes UTIs, from entering your vaginal canal and then your urethra. We also have the world's first and only flushable tampon wrapper, which significantly reduces the plastic waste that's associated with tampons and pads. Most tampons and pads today are wrapped in single-used, non-recyclable plastics. our answer to this problem is a flushable tampon wrapper. We also have the best absorbency in the organic tampons class because no one wants a leaky tampon. Um, and the issue with tampons is largely that they're not treated as medical devices. So there's no fixed rules on the testing that needs to be done to ensure the safety of tampons and pads. So this is just a screen grab from one of the many product recalls that happen in the world of tampons and pads. Most frequently, there's bacterial contamination. Sometimes there's issues where tampons and pads unravel, sometimes inside the woman that's wearing them. Um, and whenever a tampon hasn't been sanitized and it hasn't been batch tested, it could contain harmful pathogens or other harmful ingredients. And it's important to know what's on your tampon because it's pressing against the most absorbent membrane in the human body, the vaginal mucosa. And the vaginal mucosa has direct contact with your bloodstream, so it's really important to know what's in your tampon. And in order for us to guarantee that our tampons are clean and produced to the highest possible standards, we brought manufacturing in-house. So this is footage from our factory, which is certified to GMP for pharmaceuticals, ISO 13485 for medical devices. And we're also B Corp certified. So outside of our medical standards and the quality control, which we want to bring into our tampon manufacturing, we also care about ethics and sustainability. Part of our commitment to supporting our local community is to provide employment opportunities to women who escaped sexual trafficking. So we have partnerships with two charities who support women who escape sexual trafficking as they look to reintegrate within society. And we're also B Corp certified because of our carbon neutrality status. So the entire operation that we run is carbon neutral. And our tampons are always batch tested for safety because we treat them as medical devices. We have applied the standards that are used for artificial limbs or medications, brain implants. So every batch of the tampons is tested to ensure that it doesn't have any pathogens such as Candida or E. coli, staph. And then we also test for metals such as arsenic or lead, as well as for dioxides and pesticides. Again, ensuring that what you put inside your body is as clean as possible. And they started with the premise that tampons can be used to provide localized pain relief. And this is the first product that we brought to market in March 2020. We have now helped over 75,000 women in the UK have a better period as a result of using the tampon. And again, that takes advantage of the vaginal route of drug administration, which provides for significantly safer and more effective pain relief. And it also allows us to have a two-in-one product, which both soaks up your menstrual fluid and at the same time releases a proprietary formulation for pain relief into the vaginal canal. And we've been through multiple rounds of clinical trials as well as post-market surveillance in order to ensure the safety and efficacy of our products. Daye tampons work faster than painkillers with fewer side effects and for a much bigger percentage of the general population. So again, going back to the statistic that women were only included in clinical trials in 1993, the majority of painkillers, over-the-counter painkillers, don't work well for female pain and for period pain in particular. And painkillers also come with significant side effects. So this is a study on Mido, which is one of the most commonly used forms of menstrual pain relief in North America. It can lead to opioid addiction, Mido. And on the next slide, you will see there's many reasons for why you shouldn't use too many over-the-counter painkillers. If you use over-the-counter painkillers, you're exposed to a higher risk of clinically significant side effects such as rashes, vomiting, unusual tiredness, troubled breathing, weight gain, nausea. Those happen in about 14% of people who use over-the-counter painkillers for their menstrual pain. Now, another reason for why you should always ask your tampon manufacturer or your tampon brand what type of testing they have done is because period care products can sometimes contain phthalates and parabens, which have been shown to be disruptive to human health, and in particular to the endocrine system. So this on the slide today is a study from 2020, and I wanted to show you the conclusion of that study on the next slide. Parabens can disrupt hormones, harm fertility and the reproductive organs, affect birth outcomes, and increase the risk of cancer. This was the conclusion of the study. And given how widespread they are and available in all sorts of consumer products, but particularly in tampons and menstrual pads, which again are in close contact with your reproductive system, it's important that we highlight the potential negative side effects of these chemicals, so that consumers are aware of what questions to ask, so they can ensure they're buying the safest product possible. And so that they can also demand higher standards from regulators. And after reinventing the tampon so it can serve for localized pain relief and quality menstrual care, we're now reinventing it further so you can use it to screen your reproductive health. And what you can see on the screen is our diagnostic tampon, where you can send us your used tampon back and understand if you have any pathogens affecting your gynecological health or fertility negatively. And we started this because vaginal health screening has chronically low rates of uptake, as you will see on the next slide. It was recently estimated that over 570,000 women in the UK are currently experiencing delays in the provision of pap smears and STI and infection screening. And what we want to do is to create the conditions for seamless, at-home, non-invasive screening. And actually, the tampon does just that. So not only does it allow for at-home non-invasive screening, it also significantly increases the diagnostic accuracy of STI, HPV, and infection screening. So what this means is a higher sensitivity and specificity due to the tampon collecting a better quality sample from your vaginal canal compared to the swab. So it's not just more convenient, it's also more accurate. And on the next slide, you can see an overview of how tampons compare in terms of sensitivity and specificity for the most common vaginal infections and STIs compared to culture, urine, the endocervical swab, and the vaginal swab. Across the board, tampons are demonstrating a higher rate of sensitivity and specificity. And this is how our service works. So you use a tampon as you normally would after receiving it at home. You then take it out, you place it in a container, you ship that container back to one of our partner labs through the post, and then you have your results available online. So you can always have access to your health record. And importantly, outside of your health record, we also want to provide you with access to aftercare. So after you have received your results, you can book virtual or in-person appointments with gynecological health specialists, so fertility specialists, endometriosis specialists, PCOS specialists, NHS nurses, sexual health nurses, GPs, anyone that you need to help you make sense of your results and to help you make sense of what your next steps should be. And also we have integrated with a prescribing pharmacy. So through Daye, you can get your prescriptions delivered straight to your door. So if you need antibiotics for your chlamydia or antifungals for bacterial vaginosis, we can send them right to your door. And I wanted to showcase some of the research that we've been doing because it's really exciting. We've been partnering with organizations like Liverpool Women's Hospital, which is the largest gynecological health hospital in Europe. And here you can see tampons significantly increase the accuracy of vaginal diagnostics compared to the vaginal swab and the cervical swab. The next study is a study that we did with Hologic, which is one of the largest players in diagnostics. And importantly, if I can get your attention to HR-HPV, that stands for high-risk HPV strain. The tampon significantly increases the diagnostic accuracy for high-risk HPV strains. And this is important because high-risk HPV strains are significantly associated with cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is the second deadliest cancer in women. And right now, a lot of women are skipping their pap smear, they're skipping their HPV test because it's so invasive. Particularly victims of sexual trauma are finding it incredibly invasive and therefore are not attending their regularly scheduled appointments. And we hope that we can do something to improve the status quo. Apart from screening for STIs and HPV, we also screen the vaginal microbiome, which is a very exciting area of gynecological health. The vaginal microbiome has a direct relationship with a number of different gynecological health functions, from your risk of infections to how likely you are to have an adverse fertility outcome, such as miscarriage, preterm labor, or ectopic pregnancy. And this is again a study that we did with Liverpool Women's Hospital, building on top of existing research, demonstrating that there is a relationship between the presence of certain microbiota and adverse fertility outcomes such as miscarriage, preterm labor, and ectopic pregnancy. Now, what this means on a very practical level is that if you're someone that has suffered with recurrent miscarriages or persistent infertility, and you've been through all of the other, hormonal tests and medical tests, it could be that what's causing your fertility difficulties is actually a disruption to your microbiome or the presence of a certain pathogen, which is great to know because a vaginal microbiome screen, it costs you 70, 80 pounds. You then, if you do have a pathogen such as mycoplasma and ureaplasma, you take antibiotics for it and you're good to go. So the way to solve a vaginal microbiome disruption or the presence of a certain pathogen isn't through long and costly and complicated treatment plans. It's actually very simple. It's just that our clinical practice in Western countries hasn't really evolved to include looking after the microbiome or understanding how the microbiome affects fertility. Fortunately, there's a lot of exciting new research that is being published, which will influence clinical practice in the near future. And I wanted to summarize some of the key groups that we can serve with our vaginal microbiome screen. So obviously those with an active sex life, who just want to know that they don't have an STI. People going through an IVF cycle, so there's direct relationship between a disrupted vaginal microbiome and a lower likelihood of having a successful IVF outcome. And if you're about to spend £10,000 or £15,000 on an IVF cycle, you should know if a pathogen could disrupt your success chances. We also have some exciting use cases for those who are suffering from recurrent infections, because vaginal microbiome screening allows us to identify exactly what pathogens are present, so we can then customize your treatment plan, and finally take you out of that recurrent cycle of BV, thrush, treatment, recurrence, by targeting the specific pathogen that's causing your symptoms. For those that are suffering from recurrent miscarriages, again, the microbiome does play a role in how likely you are to have a recurrent miscarriage, so it's important to know. And there's an interesting case for women who are experiencing perimenopause or menopause. Vaginal microbiome screening is a very accurate way to diagnose vaginal atrophy. And studies we have been doing, again, with Liverpool Women's Hospital, show that patients prefer to use a tampon over a swab, and that the tampon causes less vaginal bleeding. So I finally just quickly wanted to highlight two use cases. So this is our pre-IVF checkup. We check for ureaplasma, mycoplasma, Gardnerella, Candida, your overall lactobacilli levels, as well as for common STIs, because the presence of these pathogens and low levels of lactobacilli could negatively affect your IVF cycle. And then we're also able to test for group B strep, which is very important for pregnant mothers, because screening for group B strep can allow you to determine with your physician whether further treatment is necessary. Group B strep is not currently available on the NHS, but it is recommended as part of private clinical practice. And lastly, not only are we, offering the screening and the diagnostic as well as the aftercare, back to our original mission, which is to bridge the gender gap in medical research and innovation, we are also collecting data on the relationship between vaginal health and HPV, gynecological cancers, menopause, endometriosis, and PCOS. And we're making this anonymized data available to our research partners at Liverpool Women's Hospital as well as Mayo Clinic, so they can then help advance modern medicine's understanding of what causes gynecological disease and how best to treat it, bridging this decades-long data gap in gynecological health. And we're very proud to be working with some incredible researchers that you can see on the screen in front of you. We have a 26 people strong medical advisory board, and they advise our clinical and regulatory vision, as well as how we bring our products to market. And lastly, just a quick discount code for anyone that wants to take advantage of these products. We have a 20% discount code, Bloomin20, which you can use at checkout across any of the products on Daye's website.
Amazing. There's so much information there that you're sharing. And yet it's such a discourse that really we need to delve into in greater detail and have that conversation with women so that they are becoming familiar with these nuances of their health. So we're incredibly fortunate to have you pioneering that path for that broader conversation ultimately. I mean, I work specifically with women's health and fertility, and I see all the time women coming in and saying, what else can I be doing? And is there anything else that I can change because of this unexplained diagnosis, be it infertility or recurrent miscarriage? And, there's nothing to be said for it. Yet the microbiome is such a budding and yet significant area of medicine ultimately, and yet not one that is necessarily that available or spoken about within the medical world. Do you know?
Most microbiome tests are like 500 pounds, so they're very, very inaccessible. That's part of what we're passionate about, is just making the test, more feasible for an everyday person's budget.
Yeah, it's the price that you're saying is absolutely amazing for the level of information that you're getting and the ease of doing it as well. Is there a way that women can support their microbiome, and that you're currently working with that can help them, as a general support? So if all their tests come back negative, but they still want to work with their general microbiome and supporting their natural gynecological health, is there anything that you would recommend at that point?
Yeah, so a few different things. The first one is never douching. So inserting soaps or creams or deodorants or just anything scented or soapy in the vaginal canal. So we're not talking about the vulva. You can wash the vulva with, gentle soap, warm water, but if you insert inside the vagina, you will disrupt the vaginal microbiome and you will change pH levels, which leaves you more open to vaginal infections, to STIs, to other disruptions. The other thing to keep in mind, if you have had persistent vaginal symptoms that appear to be unexplained, it could be the form of contraception that you're on. So different forms of hormonal contraception affect your vaginal microbiome and overall lactobacilli levels differently. So do look into, if you're someone that has suffered with recurrent thrush or recurrent BV, it could be related to your coil if you're using a coil. So have a conversation with your, with your GP or with your OBGYN or with your fertility specialist. And if you're not actively trying to conceive, do use condoms instead of letting your partner ejaculate inside of your vagina, because sperm has a very different pH level to that of the vaginal canal, and sperm is one of the kind of biggest offenders when it comes to disrupting the vaginal microbiome. Smoking is known to decrease your lactobacilli levels. And in order to support your vaginal microbiome health, eating probiotic-rich foods, so kefir, yogurt, kimchi, leafy greens, that will enhance both the microbiome of your gut and of your vagina, because they're very related. And probiotic supplementation. If you can't get your lactobacilli through your food, use a high quality probiotic supplement. When selecting your probiotic supplement, do ask the company of whether they've conducted clinical trials. Does it work specifically for the vaginal microbiome? Will their lactobacilli survive in the acidity of the vagina and the acidity of the gut? Is their probiotic freeze dried? Because otherwise it won't be alive by the time you ingest it. And something I actually recently discovered, and I was quite shocked by, not that it's that big of a thing, but most probiotics are not vegan, and they're made from human breast milk or human saliva. So if you're not into that, make sure that your probiotics are vegan.
Gosh, I really was not aware of that. Yeah. You learn something new every day. Gosh. The other aspect of everything that you've spoken about, and again, something that we're really passionate about, is endocrine disruptors. So the toxins and chemicals that are included in these menstrual products. So again, we try and bridge a level of information to our patients about the things that they're putting on their body, things they're putting into their body too. And given that menstrual products, as you mentioned before, are so they're so close, if not touching, the vaginal tissue, which is incredibly absorbent. We don't think about necessarily the impact of what we're putting into our body. And one of the difficulties there, from my understanding, is that it can often be cumulative. So it's not that immediate response where you're like, oh gosh, this is uncomfortable. It's much more of this cumulative disruption to that endocrine system, so your hormones in general, that can contribute towards things like the development of certain pelvic inflammatory issues and pelvic pain disorders as well.
So chronic fatigue, chronic exhaustion, which so many women suffer from.
And so how is it that Daye, you mentioned that that what you do in there, you use the gamma thing.
Gamma irradiation,
yeah.
So that Gamma allows us to fully remove any and all pathogens. So because tampons are not considered medical devices, most tampons don't have a medical device supply chain. So they're not manufactured in clean rooms. The people handling the machines are not wearing full body protective gear, which is what you saw in our video. Most tampons are produced in what's called a generally clean environment, which is just an open manufacturing floor. And obviously, pathogens can enter the surface of your tampon when they're produced in open air and handled by staff who are not wearing protective clothing. So we produce in a clean room, and we ask our staff to wear a full body suit. And then on top of that, to be extra sure, because something could have gone wrong in the supply chain. We don't make the cotton for our tampons, right? We purchase that. We add that final step of gamma irradiation in the final packaging of the product, and that guarantees that there's no microbial contamination on the surface of the tampons. And then for heavy metals, pesticides, dioxides, we just do lab testing. And if a batch shows up positive, we have to discard that batch. And that's what we really wish regulators would ask from other companies as well, because we have the goodwill to self-regulate, but no one else in the space does that. No one else treats their tampons like medical devices. No one else does batch testing, and that's why you have these random product recalls when people complain. I wish regulators took a more active role in quality standards for period care. There's no quality standards for period care.
It's completely unregulated.
They're considered general hygiene products, so the same as toilet paper.
So despite there being, this being an insertable device, there's still, and despite there being many, many studies about the impact, like the health impact, overall systemic health impact of these specific chemicals and toxins, and yet they're shown to be present in our menstrual products. Be it, from my understanding as well, it's not just tampons or pads, it's also menstrual moon cups and period pants as well.
Yes, period pants as well, yeah.
Yeah, which is, again, when they try and align themselves in many ways as being the healthier, more sustainable option, it really throws everyone out in regards to the choices that they need to be making. But yeah, it's interesting how none of these things have to be disclosed. They are just, they're present and they're on the shelves. And without us, as you said, like self-regulating and checking and being informed about these things, actually we're exposing ourselves to a huge amount of toxins that have these massively adverse health effects, including things like infertility, miscarriage, as you've been studying.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing how impactful it can be.
It's disappointing, but it's like it's the way that it is in a lot of areas of gynecological health, right? Like it has been chronically underfunded, under-researched, underappreciated. That's why there's this very, very strong need for more research, more awareness, you know, for us to be having more conversations about gynecological health, so that it stops being this, you know, taboo or shameful topic. You know, when I fundraise for my company, for Daye, investors either think I'm flirting with them because I'm talking about vaginas, or they just, you know, they look down to the floor and they can't make eye contact because they're so uncomfortable. And the other day I had this anecdote which really struck me. I have a WhatsApp group with some of my really close friends, and I'm the founder of a gynecological health company, and I have been for the past 6 years. So I asked them, "Oh, do you have painful periods? We're doing this research. If you do have painful periods, please let me know so that I can include you." And then I immediately get a direct message from one of the friends that's in that group being like, "Oh, that's sensitive personal information. We shouldn't talk about that in a group chat." I'm like, "What?" Yeah, it just shocks me every day how stigmatized gynecological health still is.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of that, again, comes down to education, but education that perhaps should be started at a much younger age, you know, when we're actually starting our periods, and how significant that can be in regards to how we as women live our lives and our health long term as well. Yeah, so I mean, who knows where that will go and how that will happen, in that discourse again will change, but hopefully again those education structures will come into place so that we don't have to be hiding away and just trying to private message information about, you know, this or that. What's next for Daye then? Because it sounds like you've been on one hell of a journey for the past 6 years and you're making the most incredible impact already. But it sounds like that's not where you're going to stop. It sounds like there's a lot more in store for you guys.
So outside of the pain relieving tampon and the diagnostic tampon, the next key area where we want to expand is holistic period pain management. The easier and faster detection of endometriosis and PCOS, as well as the facilitation of a smoother experience for symptom management for endometriosis and PCOS. And we also have a special interest in menopause. Our UK medical director, Dr. Paula Briggs, she's the chairperson of the British Menopause Society, and we do think we have a role to play to enhance the experience of gynecological health from your first menstruation through to menopause and beyond.
That sounds absolutely incredible. I'm really excited to see how that all comes to fruition. Do you feel like the what you're currently doing and the medical, the tests, the diagnostics, essentially that side of things, do you feel like that will ever be incorporated into general practice, like GP?
Yeah, well, we have a pilot with a London-based clinic, an obstetrics clinic, a private one, and we have completed pilots with NHS trusts and NHS clinics as well. So we're hoping to gradually spread the word and have tampon screening be available within your regular GP practice. So instead of you having to go and strip half naked in front of your GP, they can just send you your tampon kit to your door, and then, you know, instead of getting like a pokey swab and a set of confusing instructions, you get the product that you've used thousands of times in your lifetime and isn't intimidating to you.
that would be amazing, because again, it's not a terribly accessible service, and it's not something that people know a lot about. So any way of reworking that system would be absolutely amazing. Incredible. So is there anything else that you wanted to add to anything that we've spoken about today?
No, I just wanted to also express my appreciation for the work that you're doing. I know many members of our community have found great relief and understanding from the services that you're providing. And yeah, I'm just excited for what the future holds when we put our heads together to solve problems in gynecological health.
Absolutely. I think your values are very much aligned with our clinic values. So it will be incredible to see what flourishes from there. I think, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Well, it was so lovely speaking to you, Valentina. I'm very aware that you've got another meeting very, very soon.
Yes.
So I won't keep you for too much longer, but thank you so much for spending the time.
Thank you as well, Kimberly. Really appreciate your time.
No problem. It was lovely speaking to you. And I hope that, again, this is just the beginning of something incredible. So,
yes.
Great.